the National Strength and Conditioning Association. Lee has spent the last 2 decades discovering the true principles and foundations of functional, multi-directional speed. Lee frequently does clinics and camps around the United States and abroad. Lee Taft.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks everyone for coming. Last presentation, I know everybody gets anxious to get out and start the evening activities, but I appreciate you coming. I want to thank Coach Stiggins for inviting me and the whole organization for having me in. It's an honor. I enjoy coming to events like this and speaking at them or just attending because I get to learn and I get to meet such great people like yourselves, and it only advances my career as well. So what we're going to try to do today is share some thoughts and ideas on multi-directional speed. I'm going to touch a little bit on top-end speed. If I have time, I got a lot of slides I want to try to get through. And then I was even asked to talk a little bit about dealing with large groups. So that might be something we'll hit at the very end. But basically, I want to try to put a big emphasis on how you should be viewing multi-directional speed from a skill position, from a skill set. The problem that I've seen over the years with teaching multi-directional speed is that we often treat it as conditioning, or we teach it from a standpoint of what we were taught when we were athletes, or when we were young coaches, and whatever your coach taught, and whatever his or her coach taught, and it just kind of goes down the chain. What we have to do is do a better job, all of us have to do a better job of questioning things that we see. And question even everything that you see today, and I guarantee you, I'm going to show you some things that are going to be 180 degrees the opposite of what you've been told and taught and believe in. And that's okay. Because when I first started in the industry in the 80s, that was the first thing I did is learn to question things. That's one thing my father taught me, who was a very, very good coach for over 40-something years, was in fitness as well. And he taught me, always challenge what you've learned, but not to be disrespectful, but just so that it makes sense to you, so that you can add more value to the information that you just learned. So that's what I want you to do today, because I promise you, when I hit some of these slides, I can guarantee you, some of you are going to look at it and say, there's no way that stuff is right. There's no way. Okay, but everything that I teach is because I've watched. Everything that I endorse in terms of movement, there's a lot of movements that I will talk about. I didn't invent them. You didn't invent them. They just occur. The body does it naturally. I endorse that movement. I encourage it. I don't discourage it. Okay, and you'll know what I'm talking about halfway through the slides when I get to some of the topics here. Okay, so what I want you to do is just open your mind, just kind of soak it in and say, you know what, I don't know that makes sense, and I don't know that it applies to my current situation or my current athletes at this level. Okay, so just kind of have fun with it. Hopefully it makes sense to you. And I'll warn you, I am not probably the weakest point of my presentations are my PowerPoints. They're very weak. I'm just not really good at stuff on here. I would much rather be in a large room demonstrating and doing all the stuff and then sharing comments back and forth with you. So bear with me with kind of a sloppy PowerPoint. So when I was in college, I was fortunate enough to play college basketball at a small school in New York. And I can remember our coach putting us on the line and making us do sprints at the end. It was conditioning is what it was, but we're on the end, we had to sprint, and we had to do multiple sets of those. And I can remember all of us being in a good athletic stance, and the coach would blow the whistle, and we had to take off. Well, about 2 or 3 steps in, he'd blow the whistle again, stop, everybody get back. And I was the captain this one year. And so after about 2 or 3 times of him starting us and then stopping us saying, get back, do it again, you're doing it wrong. I asked him, I said, Coach, what are we doing wrong? You keep sending us back. And he said, each one of you, when you take off, you're taking a step backwards when you go to take off. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, your feet, you're taking a step back. So long story short, every single time we reacted to his whistle, everybody would take a step back and then take off. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I didn't argue with him, I'm saying, I don't know that I'm even doing that. I'm certainly not trying to do that. That's just natural. And the rest of my teammates, the other 12 guys, we're all doing the same thing. And it was all natural. That got me started. And every time I had to evaluate a game, the coach would make me go in the film room and watch a game and kind of tear myself apart as everything I did wrong. I started to watch movement. I was enamored with speed and movement and agility. But back then, in the mid-'80s, there was not a lot out there. I could find a lot of resources on pure speed, linear-based speed, but I couldn't find multi-directional acceleration, deceleration type movements or retreating skills. I couldn't find that stuff. So the only way I knew how to do it was to watch not only myself, but other athletes. And then I started to study like advanced athletes, Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Michael Jordan, all these guys that were great movers. And then I would film our team and I'd watch the film of our games and just watch everybody move, and I saw a lot of consistencies. Everybody was doing the same thing. It looked a little bit different because somebody might be 6'6", or somebody's 5'10", and somebody's a little slower, somebody's a little faster, but it was fundamentally the same thing. So what I started to do was kind of develop a mindset that this makes a lot of sense. What I'm here, I didn't know what it was yet. I was still a college kid. I didn't know anything. I didn't know a lot about multi-directional speed or force application or biomechanics of movement or physics. So I went on kind of a mission to learn as much as I can. And I'll tell you, when I started talking about a lot of the concepts we're going to cover today and some of the principles that I follow, I took a beating. I took a big beating for many, many years. And then all of a sudden it started to come around a little bit. And the reason I believe it did is because I didn't do anything different than what the body wants to do anyway. It does it naturally. I just cleaned up the poor patterns that may have been ingrained, maybe tightness in the hips or poor posture. And if we cleaned that up, the movement looked much better. But the initial innate reaction was there, and everybody did it. So that's what kind of got me on my journey here. And I found a few things. If you watch an athlete move, if you watch the NBA Finals that's on tonight, or if you watch a shortstop in the Major League Baseball on right now, or if you watch a tennis match, or whatever you're watching, or some of the spring football games, you'll notice certain things. The feet reposition from under the hips. Most of the time, probably the majority of the time. The shoulders are really, really important, I found, in multi-directional speed. Feet are vital. If the feet aren't right, nothing else matters very much. But if the shoulders are in the wrong position, it screws up what the feet did really well. And as I started watching, and I kept seeing it, I said, yeah, that guy messed up too. He did the same exact thing this guy did, and he messed up. And then I started to notice that the athletes that were really good controlled their mass and the momentum really, really well. They were really good at finding angles to decelerate and to re-accelerate. Okay, because we'll talk a little bit later about deceleration and how deceleration, you know what it really is? It's really the first step in re-accelerating. That's what deceleration really is when we're talking multi-directional court field speed. Because if we learn to re-accelerate out of a deceleration move, we're quicker. We're much quicker. Especially when you're teaching rehearsed patterns like a pro agility or any kind of a shuttle run. It's a pattern we know. If we do it the right way and we have the right mindset and the right cueing, the right emphasis, we get quicker right off without improving anything else. And then I noticed that when we're teaching, if we include random reaction, we actually have a better carryover into performance on the court and field. So doing those rehearsed pro shuttles are great, and you got to do them because you can teach from them. But at some point, you got to make it random and you got to make it reactionary, and then it crosses over really, really well to true sport. Well, you can read this. Just understanding is, it's just if you understand certain things, you can evaluate better. And most of what we're going to cover today, even though we're going to talk about techniques and methods and principles and all that, it's making you better at assessing. That was one thing I learned when I was really young, is to try to develop a really good eye. The best coaches out there have good eyes. They see things. They see things other than just the drill. They see what should be occurring and why it didn't occur and what caused it. Okay, so those are things that we have to be able to do a really good job of. Here's a few things that I follow. Understand action, reaction, control mass and momentum, create great angles of force application, control hip height, which we'll talk about later, especially when we do lateral speed and acceleration. Allow for repositioning of the feet. Really, really crucial. That is what the best athletes do. Basically all athletes do that move well. The pelvis is the centerpiece of the legs, of what the legs move around. Now, you're going to say, well, no kidding. But what happens is the couple spots above that, or one spot above that, if we don't follow the repositioning, then that doesn't make sense. The pelvis is the area that the feet move around. If we teach everything by driving over a planted foot, then we're not really revolving around the pelvis. We need to learn to reposition, open our hips, pop, hit the ground, use what our body does really well, which is a stretch reflex, plyometric. That's what we do really well. We're born to do that. So why not allow it? Okay, and we'll cover more into that. Long force application. This is something that I made a mistake when I was young, and it was because my coaches told us not to do this. But long force application during acceleration. We always talk about short, quick, choppy steps. That's what I was taught, but it isn't that. Acceleration is about long, aggressive strides. It may feel slower, but it isn't slower. It's just we're putting more power into the ground. So when I push up, I want to drive and get length without overstriding. If I overstride, now I just killed the purpose of all that power and force application. So we'll cover a little bit about that. And I shot some video. I had a couple of videos that I wanted to get in here, and for some reason I couldn't, so I shot some videos of myself doing a few things to demonstrate that one concept right there. This bottom one, quick hands. This was something, I've spent a lot of time developing base stealing techniques. And I'm just literally talking about getting in the stance and taking off. I'm not talking about sliding or what you do once you get going. And the area that I found that I can make the biggest impact and the quickest impact is if I got the hands moving really quick. So if I have an athlete that gets in their stance, and this really involves many sports like tennis, anything where there's a quick lateral to a linear run movement. But if I can get my athletes to understand that, quick hands, because this action right here does a lot for that foot right there. And I proved it by putting athletes on a slippery surface with this back foot, because the minute we did this, this leg went just like that. So this action gives a great reaction, and that gets us going. And what lends itself to understanding is I don't want the lead leg to do anything until this leg has finished its job. But it all starts with the hand. So if I can get this action going quick, I get a great reaction down into the ground. This leg prepares to take over, and then we take off from there. And I'll show you, there's a video on that coming up in a little bit. So those are some of the things I try to follow. Different stances, various stances, both static, active. Understand linear acceleration. We want to be able to teach it from multiple positions, and you want to know why you're doing it. So if I'm in a staggered stance, I'm going to focus a lot on proper action of accelerating out of a staggered stance. I want to make sure I know which leg to push off. I may vary the stance length a little bit. I may vary the height of the athlete a little bit. We're going to go into a parallel stance and how they accelerate out of that. That's where you're going to see a repositioning action. When we do accelerate and we actually get going, we want to focus on punching and driving. We want to push down through the ground. Push the ground. Push your body forward. Get your hips moving forward by pushing down through the ground. Plyo step, which is a repositioning step. Most of you call it a fold step. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'll show you that. And when needed. Okay, it's not always needed. But if it happens, you got to know why it happens. You got to understand why athletes do what they do. Why did an athlete have a poor change of direction? Or why did he go like this when he took off? Why did he do that? He did it for a reason. We got to figure that out. Why? Okay, just simple evaluation type stuff. I use this like with my interns, if I have interns with me, just to show them, like, if you look at that, is that acceleration or is that top end speed? Well, you probably can tell it's more of an acceleration position, because top end would be more vertical. Hips would be underneath. There wouldn't be as much of a lean. So it's an evaluation tool to be able to get especially when I'm working with interns, to be able to understand that. Now, looking at pure acceleration, they're coming up out of a push-up position. And the first person, that actually happens to be my nephew, Jimmer Fredette, basketball player, he was a high school kid at this time right here. The other kid was a year behind him, played at a local high school that was a big competitor of the school that Jimmer went to. And if you notice the difference when they popped up out of their push-up position to get going, Jimmer's in a pretty good positive line of force application, driving from his feet right through his head, pretty good. And the other kid, Kevin, very weak, very tall, very thin, very weak core at this time. This was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And you can just see the difference. So the ability to look at it and say, okay, I see that, but now what's happening there? Well, you don't always know. You don't always know, to be honest with you. You don't know until you maybe see it several times or evaluate their body position and what happened. Maybe his core is weak. Maybe he doesn't understand popping up and out, driving hard enough. Because if you don't drive hard enough, you don't get into a positive acceleration angle. Okay, there's one thing that I learned a long time ago from a really good speed coach, and he said, we can lean because we're applying a lot of force. We don't lean forward so that we can apply force. You got to apply the force first, then you can lean. Because I can lean forward right now, I'm going to fall on my face. So the lean comes because you're applying a lot of force. And that's what, like in this one, the first athlete's doing. Okay, so I'm just going to show you this, and just simply, when you see this, what's the first thing you notice when you see an athlete? And this is developing the eye of coaching speed or acceleration. Go. Go. Okay, what's he do? Pop. Go. Okay, not too bad right there, but the other ones, he pops up pretty quick. And he was a college sprinter. So, but he comes up a little bit fast. You know, he keeps his head down, but his body comes up pretty fast, and his steps. One thing we worked on with him is getting his stride longer coming out of the blocks. All right, how do I get this to go? I need some help here to get this to go to the next. It's not moving to my next slide. Thank you. Computers and I do not get along at all. That's what I was going to try. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Now, if you look at this right here, look at the first athlete. What's wrong with that position? This is a wall drill, okay? And there's a lot to the wall drill. It's the one where you put your legs up and you run against the wall. There's a lot of things that you can pick out that are incorrect here. Number one is when we want the knee to come up, we don't want the knee at 90 degrees, or excuse me, at parallel. He's actually above that. We want the knee at 90. But if you're leaning forward, 90 degrees, the knee points down a little bit. But because his knee is really high, it's taking up all the hip extension ability in the other leg. So he collapses at the other leg. And another thing, his hands are too high. When his hands are high, there's a lot more core demand. That can be a good thing, but for a younger athlete, that's not a really good thing. So it's being able to look at that and say, okay, I see 2 or 3 things right off, and that can help your ability to coach the speed. Okay, now let's jump right into this, okay? And even if you have questions right now, fire away, all right? And I'll leave some time at the end if you have questions. But what I started calling the false step a plyo step, because I kept watching it. And I literally mean I watched this for years before I really said, you know what, that's how we move. Now, there are times when you don't need it. Okay, let's be clear. There's times when you won't need it. But if I'm in an athletic stance, the point that I'm going to push off from is the ball of my foot. So if you look at where the ball of my foot is in relation to my entire body, most of my body weight's behind the ball of my foot. So in order for me to go forward, I have to claw the ground and pull myself forward. Now keep in mind, in most sports, you don't have the luxury of rolling forward into the play because you don't know where the play is going to go. A basketball player can't do that. A tennis athlete can't do that. In certain cases, most cases, I watched Brian Urlacher a lot. I filmed him and watched him at the linebacker position. And I hear from most coaches. I coached football for 6 years in New York. And so I've been involved with it for my whole life. My brothers and my father's coaches, so I've been around it and I've watched it. And I remember watching Brian, and everybody always said, no, you always just take a step forward. But I watched him when something happened and reacted. His reaction was here or it was here. And I'll talk more about that second one I did called the hip turn. But watch this is a young girl that we were in a training session, and I asked my assistant Kyle, who's standing behind her, I said, just go get someone and let me film them on the line so we can have a visual in the white line, and just tell her to accelerate. I think we put maybe 10 yards, and tell her just to run. All right? You'll see a lot of flaws in her running, but I just want you to see the purpose here of the run here. Okay? She did not take a step back. Okay, because if she took a step back, her hips have to go. This would be a half a step. This would finish that step. She didn't do that. She was here, and all she did was realign her body. She wasn't told to do that. She didn't know what she was doing except for go from here to there as fast as she could. Okay? Okay, so here it is. Just I slowed it down. And you'll see mistakes here, and she would be cleaned up a lot, but you'll... Okay, so it's just a reaction. And that's not something I'm going to say to her, don't do that. Don't take that, don't take that innate ability, natural ability away from her, because that's a random reaction that we all do in sport. Okay, now, now we told her not to take the step back. This is what typically happens. Okay, we get told not to do it. This is what happened to me when I was in college. Don't do it. Well, this is her trying not to take the step back. Okay, just very awkward. Because again, she's trying to get all that center of mass out in front so she can apply backwards force, back and down. That's very hard to do reactively and quick. And again, even in this situation, she's not being told anything other than going straight ahead, but in true sport, she's a soccer player. She might have to go from here back on an angle and take off. So she doesn't have the luxury of just rolling and timing it to move forward. It's a natural reaction. Okay? What did you do? Did you hit escape? Oh, that's the same one.
Slide it down to the bottom of the arrow down, or the little
the down
finger.
arrow and escape?
Yeah, the finger, slide it down to the bottom of the screen.
Oh, I just jumped all over the place. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think I got it. Yep, thank you. Good hustle. All right, try not to take a step back. We did that one? Is this the one I just did? Yes, I did this one. All right, so now we're going to go with, no, I'm sorry, I didn't. This is a different one. Watch this, boy. He's the same thing. We brought him up. He's another soccer player. Okay, so he was trying not to do it. He was just trying to accelerate off, but the initial instinct is to find a better angle than what they're currently in to push off. He's currently aligned in a vertical stance right now, and that doesn't do it when we want him to accelerate straight ahead. Okay, I'm just going to run this really fast. This is what I shot. I'm just going to show you different stances we come out of. It's probably nothing different than you've done, but you're going to see some acceleration positions, and you're going to see the plyo step or the repositioning steps, and you also see the hip turn, and then there's going to be a few deceleration steps, which we'll get to. So I apologize for lumping this all together. My technology skills are not real good. Okay. So this is to develop power. All I'm trying to do is develop power. You notice the drive, the length, aggressive arm action. There's a plyo step. Just trying to get off and get going as quick as we can. A lateral to linear. And we'll cover angles. There's just lateral shuffle. There's a hip turn, reposition. We don't teach pivoting. Pivoting is something you don't want to teach unless you have to because of the rules of the game, and I'll cover that. Here's a couple deceleration moves. Body position we're trying to get into. Angles, because everything I'm doing, I'm trying to equate re-acceleration back into it. Okay. Okay, now, here's a couple things, even though I jumped around a little bit. I'm going to show you just a couple exercises that I like to use to help enhance the backside mechanics of accelerating. This is a medicine ball drill I like to do, and you got to be careful of the weight that you use with athletes. If somebody big and strong, they can handle more, but it's about speed. And what I'm going to do is be in a position where I'm going to have the ball at arm's length. It increases the lever arm, the weight. So as I go to throw it, I'm trying to put pressure down and back with my lead leg. Okay, and it helps, it really, really loads the hamstring and the backside muscles for acceleration. Oh, now that I explained that, that was the wrong one. All right, that is this one. Let me. Okay, I'll show that one again. All right, what that one is, I have athletes, sometimes they don't understand punch. They don't understand putting force in the ground, because this action gives me a greater reaction of the opposite leg. So a tool that I like to use is having a medicine ball, and I start, depending on how fast the athlete is, we start the ball higher on their ribs. The quicker they get, the better they are, and the more I want to challenge them, the lower I start it. And they've got to get the ball to drive up and out before it rolls off the end of the knee. So we start it here. When they drop it, they have to have an equal and opposite arm action as well. So they drop, drive. And we're getting triple extension on the backside leg. But it teaches that hip to drive really, really quick. So let me show you that again. It helps if you're doing it with a partner. You know, you're just doing, you're trying to be accurate and throw. So just trying to be very, very quick with it. Okay? And then that would have been a front view. Here's the one I explained a minute ago. Push. Now, it seems like a really simple, basic drill, but I'm going to tell you, I tried it with a really heavy ball once, and it almost ripped my hamstrings out. Play it again. Get the ball long, drive, and try to punch your hip through. And I'm pushing off that front leg, in this case, my left leg, trying to drive and then drive through. Just a great loading exercise. Okay, now let's just talk quickly. That was kind of like our linear concepts of how we want to accelerate, and we'll touch on that again, but let's talk about lateral really quick. There's many concepts out there on how to teach lateral speed. Often we talk about when we take off laterally, we want to use the front leg. So if I'm going to my left, there's a teaching method where we're going to use the front leg and we're going to drive hard with the backside leg so that we can get a good down punch. Okay, but that's not how the body actually wants to translate and how it wants to move. It wants to produce force on one side and prepare with the other side. And while the other side is preparing, it's preparing to take the load and then punch down and back. So when I go to take off and I use both legs equally, or I use the front to punch, I'm diminishing the distance I can get out of each step. So what I want to be able to have is here, I want to be able to translate my body down, turn, which we call a directional step, and now I'm driving down and back with this leg. Okay, so I'm here, drive, and then I push and I go. And if you watch baseball, so if you get a chance to watch ESPN, the highlights, and they show somebody stealing, watch, and you'll see what they'll do. Watch a third baseman being ready to move for a hard ball hitting the hole. You'll see them make that step. It's stability and mobility working together. One side is being very stable and applying some force. The other side is being mobile and preparing to take the body over. We can't do them both together. But having said that, there may be times it might happen. You may see a goalie in soccer do that because it's so fast, and sometimes they may get caught where it's just like a lateral dive. Okay, but if they have time, they want to gain distance by pushing with one side, getting the other side ready to push and push your body forward. Okay? So here's slow motion takeoff. Okay, so I'll play it again here and I'll try to stop it. So look at the extension of the backside leg. The front side leg is preparing to take over the weight, and the hands led the whole thing. The hands took off first. My hands were gone, which created that backside leg, that triple extension to push down and away in the ground, and then the front leg is saying, okay, it's my turn. Now I get to take over and provide a lot of force into the ground. There's a technique that I work on a lot with basketball players, and I do it a lot with cornerbacks, linebackers. It's called a crossover. Okay, you all know what a crossover is, and I'll touch at the very end a little bit about that. But the crossover has a lot of that concept and that look right there in it. So when I go laterally, the crossover I consider one of the kings of athletic movement because it allows me to stay oriented to my opponent or the ball, but it gives me more length and distance than a shuffle because I can match speed. I can match speed of my opponent. But when I go to crossover, it's drive open, okay, drive open, and then drive and finish. But it's distance, okay? I don't want to drive across like this. I want to gain distance and get out, push the ground away. But by staying level and low, I can match the change of direction speed of my opponent. And that's the critical part. When we hit deceleration in a minute, we'll talk about that. Okay? All right, so let me just do this one more time. But I think I mentioned in here, and I wrote an article on it one time, called The Intensity of Speed. We don't teach athletes to be intense enough because we base our training off drills. We got to base it off skills and technique. If we focus on the intensity of effort, our technique, the athlete's method of which they move cleans up a lot. But when we do things just based off, we're going to go to that 5-yard, back to this 5-yard, to that 10-yard, back to that, and they know what they're doing, a lot of times there's no effort. Or there's perceived effort, but it's not true effort. So I talk to my athletes a lot about if I'm doing the pro shuttle or the 5-10-5, and this is the start, I say nothing happens until you get back here. I don't care what happens over there, I don't care what happens over there. I care how fast you get back here. So immediately I put into their head, I'm not going to waste time over here. Or I'm not going to waste time at this end. I'm going to get aggressive, and I'm going to plant, and I'm going to come back as fast as I can. I'm not going to get too caught up in this. Now, me as a coach, I'm going to say, well, the reason you weren't real quick is because your foot plant was wrong, or your shoulder swayed, or something else happened over here. You got to coach that up. But if you put too much emphasis in their brain on every little technique at each end, we forget. You got to just be aggressive, and you got to be intense, and you got to apply force, and you got to get to where you got to get, and you got to get there fast. Okay? So again, this, one more time, it's distance. I'm trying to get myself away from that white line as fast as I can. So by my third step, I'm trying to get out of the picture there. Okay, pure lateral speed. This is something that, again, just hear me out, and then if you have a question on it, let me know, and I can cover more on it. But long time ago, I started looking at the lateral shuffle, just like all the other techniques. And I started looking at why, when an athlete did a lateral shuffle, their front foot turned out, and oftentimes their feet met in the middle and sometimes hit and clicked. And I'm thinking, okay, let's why? Let's figure it out, because I knew I did sometimes. Okay, I did that sometimes. When I shuffled, my feet would hit in the middle sometimes, but it never bothered me. It never affected me. So I started looking at it, and I started watching and seeing all these athletes, and I watched it's easy to follow in basketball, because basketball, you see so many opportunities for shuffles. Other sports, you don't see it as often. Soccer, you're going to get it a little bit, but basketball, that's primarily what it is. When an athlete needs raw, massive speed laterally, they got to get there in a hurry, you're going to see length. Just like I talked on linear acceleration, you want to see length. So when I go to shuffle, we don't want this. Oh, who was the strength coach there at USC? Was it Chuck Berry with the crab technique there? Was it Will Ferrell? Will Ferrell, if you guys know what that is, you'd laugh, but you might not know what that is. Okay, so if we're going laterally and I'm pushing hard, there's the cycle that occurs just like in running. Okay, there's the plant phase, there's the swing phase. Plant, swing. Well, when we go laterally, it's much like the side stroke in swimming. We push, we reach. We recover, we pull. While this arm is resting, this arm is working. While this arm is working, this arm is resting and recovering. Same thing in the lateral gait cycle. So when I have an athlete shuffling sideways, when they push with this leg is preparing to take over when this leg stops, because we want to keep momentum going. We want as little deceleration as possible. So as I push, this leg will turn, and the toe naturally turns out. I'm thinking, why does the toe turn out? And then it dawned on me, it made sense. I'm a lot stronger using my posterior chain muscles than I am using adductors this way. Plus, if I shuffle this way with my feet straight ahead and I'm on the ball of my front foot, so I'm going this way, I'm on the ball of my right foot, not only am I fighting the battle with a weaker set of muscles, but I'm also fighting the rotational forces because I'm on the ball of my foot. So I have a size 10.5 foot. So when the pressure is right there, I've got my heel wanting to kick inside. And I got to fight that. That isn't efficient. It isn't good. But now if I'm playing tennis or if I'm in soccer and I'm just positioning, this is fine. But when I need speed and I really want to go, that front side leg gets out of the way until it's turned, and then it pulls, and it uses the heel because the heel is solid. It's a rock. It digs. It's like a shovel. It just digs and pulls the body with it. But keep in mind, it only does it once momentum's going. You never go here, pull. It's push, pull, push, pull, push, pull, push, pull, and you go across, okay? So that's why the heel turns out, or the toe turns out. It's much safer, it's much stronger, and it keeps momentum going. You got to keep the mass and momentum going, and that's what it does, okay? So this was another assistant of mine. He's actually an assistant strength coach now at RPI in Albany area in New York. I just captured him doing a shuffle. He's going to his right. You can see the lead leg preparing. He's pushing off. He's preparing. He's not in a great stance there. It's not a very good stance. We'll talk about that in a minute, but that's what's happening. Here's the lateral gait cycle again. I had 3 girls doing what I call a 5-5-5 shuffle drill. They shuffle 5 yards, shuffle 5, finish 5. Okay, it's a test I use a lot. But look at them. I caught them all on camera. Look at their lead foot. All of them are turned out. That is not a coachable item. I don't coach that. Now, I will correct it if I see issues or problems, but that's just something that was just caught natural. That's what they were doing. Now, watch this. All of them are in middle stance. One's preparing to push, the other one's recovering. They'll meet in the middle. Sometimes their feet will hit. The only issue that you're going to run into when they're probably having trouble is if they cross. And I don't know that I've ever seen that before. I mean, they might cross like if their hips are turned, but laterally, I don't know that I've ever seen somebody cross and hook their feet. If they do, you got bigger problems than lateral shuffle. There's something else going on there that we probably can't fix. So the lateral gait cycle is push, reach, recover, finish, momentum, keep the momentum going until the big power leg can push again. Okay, this leg has to get back in there, and this front leg's job is to keep it going. Just keep the body moving while we're going through that shuffle. Cueing for the lateral shuffle. Stay in the tunnel. This is one of my favorite cues because it makes a lot of sense with my athletes. Whether I'm working with top athletes, older athletes, or especially younger athletes. If you ever have the privilege of working with younger kids. I know you guys are all college age, but if you have young kids, it just makes a lot of sense. Cue them, get in the tunnel. But I do it with Jimmer now. That's where I've been for the last 3 weeks, is out in Provo with Jimmer working on him on his defense. And getting him down here, it tends to get up, tends to suck the hips under, and that's not what we want. We want hips back, knees forward, shoulders forward, and move in the tunnel the whole time. I don't want your head to hit the top of the tunnel. So every movement he does, it's all staying down. And the reason you want that is if I stay here, look at my hips and my knees. If I'm up here, this is what I've got to give the ground. That's what I've got to give force into the ground. But if I'm here, now I've got all that. Every push-off means a lot more. It'll get me further. But if we only think acceleration, we're missing the boat because staying in this tunnel affords me a fantastic deceleration angle, naturally. So if I'm running this way, but I'm still in that tunnel, I'll get a really nice angle. But if I'm tall and I do this, we tend to get top-heavy, what I call shoulder sway. Shoulders get caught moving out of position. I might have a great foot angle, but if my shoulders are out of position, I'm gone. Okay, I'm gone. I'm out of the play. Okay? All right, here's this exercise right here. There's a series that I go through, and I'll take you through the series, and then you'll see the second part of it in a little bit. This is just called side medicine ball throw. You all do it. The reason I do it is for lateral acceleration, deceleration angles, not for medicine ball or not for core training. That's a residual effect. But I want acceleration. And I want the ball to be a driver. The ball is a driver to let the athlete feel that, especially if it's heavy enough, if they're doing it from here and they try to push, it's kind of like you just don't have any angle. But if they get down here and they push, they have a great angle to apply force. Now, here's one thing before I show you this, and you'll see me get into it. The defensive or athletic stance for multi-directional speed, when we're in our traditional athletic stance, we've got to understand force application angles. So, I want my feet straight ahead. When I'm straight ahead and I push my shins forward, my knees forward, it immediately dorsiflexes my ankle, and that's a good thing. That loads the posterior aspect of my lower leg, and that's good. While that happens, if my feet are turned out, by the way, now I consider that plantar flexing. I'm still kind of dorsiflex, but I'm more plantar flexing, and that's not good. It's not safe. When my ankle is open like this, and I'm on the ball of my foot, that's a rolled ankle. Okay, so I want to lock the heel in, okay, by getting the knees forward, feet straight ahead. The other thing I want to do is, and listen to what I'm saying on this, don't panic, because everybody panics, oh, you can't do that. I want the knees to the inside, because I'm trying to go that way or that way. If I'm trying to go vertical, I'll go here. But I'm trying to go lateral, so I want my knees to the inside. But I don't push my knees down for the sake of pushing them down and in. I position them inside of my feet so that I can push away. So if I'm in this stance, do me a favor, would everybody stand up real quick, please? Just stand up right where you're at. I just want you to feel this. Get in an athletic stance. Get your feet wide, get your feet straight ahead. Now, what I want you to do is just stay tall, push your knees forward, and then your hips back and your shoulders come over. Okay, they come over the top. All right, now, put great pressure on the great toe, on the big toe. Okay, you got pressure there, so you're on the inside. Knees positioned to the inside. Now, act as if you're trying to rip a paper towel down the middle. So press out. What turns on? Very, very strong supportive muscles that we want. So if I want to go laterally, I'm now turning on what I want. Now, a cue that you've got to be careful of is try this. We often talk about playing on the balls of our feet. And sometimes we'll even come behind our athletes and we'll lift their heels up. Be very careful of that. And here's why. Take your left leg, push your ball of your foot into the ground and raise your heel a couple inches. Okay, typical coaching cue, get on the balls of your feet. Now, put a little pressure on that foot that you're on with the heels up, and now try to roll your ankle a little bit. Just roll it back and forth. You've unlocked the joint. It's very easy. That talus does what it does. It rolls really nice. Okay, now drive that heel down into the ground, but keep the pressure on the ball of your foot. Now apply pressure down and out. That's a great platform right there to decelerate or to reaccelerate. Really safe, too. So the heels can be down. You just don't want to be on the heels. You've got to be forward. Okay, thank you. You can have a seat. Okay, so watch this exercise. Watch my backside leg. Knee to the inside and push. I'm trying to translate my body forward towards the wall. Okay, so the setup for this exercise is this is phase one, right here. Phase one is we get our nice wide athletic stance, load everything. So you got to go up and coach them. You got to push their knees forward, push their hips back, make sure they're loaded right. But we want ball at the chest, at the sternum, and we want elbows out. You don't want to throw a medicine ball. You want to push it or put it. Okay, because if we throw it, we're going to hurt ourselves. So it's here. And then we sit, we apply force down and away, and we translate. It's an acceleration drill. In a minute, you'll see how it's a deceleration drill. Phase two, which I didn't show on here, would be I would take one or two shuffles forward, then push the ball. So it would be like this. I'm here, shuffle, and then throw. Get your hips through. Teach them disassociation. Get their hips through. All right? And when we go on retreating skills, I'll cover that. Okay. Crossover, I kind of went through that, but that's a huge move. The crossover, the ability to disassociate. The crossover is good when we disassociate. It's poor when we don't. So this would be a non-disassociating move right here. I've got to disassociate upper and lower, and I run with my lower body, I shuffle with my upper body. So if I need to stay with someone that's going pretty fast, that's how I'll do it. That gives me distance. And if the athlete is going fast enough to cause me to do a crossover, that means they have to decelerate all that speed too. So I can decelerate as quick as they can, or at least close to as they can. Okay, retreating. Let me go through this really quick, and then we'll hit a deceleration in a second here. The hip turn. The hip turn to me is the exact opposite of the plyo step. It's a repositioning step. In basketball, or in many sports, we teach, those of you who played basketball or coach it will know this drill, where we shuffle, they call it a Z drill. You shuffle up the court. You shuffle, you plant your foot, open, pivot, plant your foot, open, and pivot. It's too slow. But here's where you've got to question it. And that's what I did. I'm thinking, okay, I've done that drill since I was a little kid. Why is it too slow? Number one, it's creating friction into the ground. It's rubber on wood. Friction into the ground is just slower. Higher risk of injury because we're torquing, but it's friction. Number two, if I'm going this way, and now I want to go on 45-degree angle this way, but yet I'm doing a pivot step, to perform a proper pivot, I got to get weight over that foot a little bit and then pivot. I'm vertically aligned on my knee, and I don't want to be vertically aligned. We just talked about that. We got to be inside, but I don't want to be inside with my shoulders outside. This hurts, okay? So when I make my pivot move, if I'm creating friction and I'm aligned over the top of my foot, I can accelerate really, really quick, okay? And plus, my shoulders are too vertical. But if we now say, let's do what the athletes do anyway, what I termed a hip turn, because it just made sense to me, now when we get here, rather than pivoting, I'm going to reposition and push. This creates my shoulders going in the new direction, which allows force, action, reaction to come up through me. It gives me the stretch reflex system that we want. That's so valuable in sport and movement, and it's protective. Proprioceptively, it's protective. It does a lot of good stuff in the joint, protects us. Okay, so we don't want to be pivoting unless it's a rule. You know, if I have the ball and I'm in that, I can't walk. But when I want to move, it's reposition and push. I want to get out of that spot. Just like I talked about the intensity or speed before, the key is get out of the current position you're in as fast as you can. And I'll take you through the progression we go through. It's a really, really good, simple progression to teach all your athletes. If I want to, I'll use it as a warm-up. But right now, I'm actually using it with a lot of basketball players as a focus of training because they're not doing it well enough in their sport. So here's the progression. The first one you're going to do is the quick hips. Just think Hoosiers, the movie Hoosiers, when they were blowing the whistle and the guys were doing this. The mistake with that is they were doing this. You know, they're just doing the twist. What we want to do is make sure it lends itself to acceleration angles. So what we're going to do is we get the athlete down in their stance, and I'm going to first start it off, and this is called quick hips. Step one, quick hips. I'm going to point in a direction, and they have to freeze. Okay, so if I point this way, they go disassociate. I'm still facing here. Disassociation creates stretch reflex, and that's a good thing. We want that. So now when I'm on this angle, I freeze them, and I ask them, could you push off quickly from this current angle? So if I'm a linebacker and all of a sudden I read pass, it's got to be push and get away. So we want the hips to rotate. The foot rotates. I'm dorsiflex. I'm in my lateral athletic stance. I just disassociated with my upper body. So now from here, I can create the next phase. Okay, but let me finish the first one, the quick hip. So once we get the athletes comfortable and understanding, don't just rotate and be vertically aligned over your feet. Have a push-off angle. Then we start doing it reactively. So if you point this way or this way, I just have to react and get back. But stay in the tunnel. There's never any hip change. We don't want to come up and down. Stay level. And the reason you want to stay level is because when I hip turn, I've got this great angle, bunch of angles. I want to utilize them and push off. So stay down and create your height, what I like to call horizontal height. Horizontal height is this. I'm long and I'm tall, I'm this way. I want to push through the air. I don't want to go vertical, okay? The next phase is hip turn to shuffle. I'll set a cone maybe 3 yards, 5 yards, depending on how far I want them to go. So they'll hip turn now on my command, and whatever way I point, they hip turn, and then they shuffle to that cone, and you can have them run back or whatever you want. My purpose most of the time is let's get this movement down, the retreating skill. Let's make it fast, okay? And then we'll do it the other way. The next phase is hip turn to crossover. I'm looking for length of stride and distance covered. So if I'm 5 yards, I want them there in like a step and a half. I mean, I really want them pushing. So it's here, here, push, get out. Gain as much distance as you can. Come back, same thing on the other side, push off. Third phase or fourth phase is turn and run. Now the ball's, it's over your head, outfielder. Here, turn, take off, get into your sprint position as quick as you can. Once you've done that and you're satisfied, Now you start to add comeback skills. Okay? So do every one we just did, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, but now when you give a command of back, so maybe I'm doing the shuffle one. I'm here, shuffle, and then I got to get back. If we're doing this, I'm asking you, yell it out if you know this, because I want you thinking. If I come here and I plant to come back, what are we evaluating on that to come back? What are we looking for as coaches, as skill technicians? Upper body position. Because the feet are going to be right. You may have a mistake with the feet. You may. But it's going to be this. They're going to get caught here. And then they're going to have to take an extra step and then push forward. So I always talk about shoulders in front. If I have an athlete that has a difficult time with that, I will do this a few times to get them to think. I will position their hands out in front. So now when they make their move, their hands drive their shoulders in front. You don't do it for very long because it slows down the disassociation move. But it teaches them shoulders have to be in front all the time. That's how we re-accelerate quickly. Okay? Okay, well, here's a young man that we had earlier doing it. See, and the whole key is to get up. Now, his stride is short. Watch his first step over the white line. I want that thing twice as far, and I want his shoulders out further. So that's what I would be coaching. See, really good quick action, great disassociation, good foot plant, but then he didn't do anything else with his upper body. Get that upper body out of there. Go get your feet to chase your shoulders. Okay, get your shoulders out in front. Okay, so there's, I don't know what that is actually. All right, deceleration. We already talked about it. It's if you teach re-accelerating out of your deceleration teaching, your techniques, you'll get a much cleaner deceleration move. So for example, here's the progression I'll go through when I'm teaching decelerating on, let's say like a lateral shuffle. We'll just have them shuffle to a spot and then stop. And what I'm doing is I'm standing on the line where I know they're going to stop. And I'm looking at shoulder sway control, and I'm looking at foot plant angle, and I'm looking at dorsiflex versus plantar flex foot position. So that's what I want to see. And did they stay in the tunnel? And I don't want shoulder sway this way either. I think I have a picture of that in here. I'll show you that. Okay, so I don't want this, and I don't want foot turned out. So I'll look at that. But here's the problem when you just have an athlete come out and stop. Because they know they're stopping, their angle is going to be less productive in re-accelerating than if you actually had them come back. Because you'll see me when I shuffle, I know you guys, I'm kind of more on that side, but if I shuffle and stop, this is the angle you're going to see. It's pretty good for stopping me. But if I'm going to come back, you're going to see a much wider angle. That's a true deceleration into re-accelerating angle. Okay? And allow repositioning to occur. So if I'm doing a shuttle run, when I'm running up and I'm going to stop, it's reposition the foot, especially if the coach blows the whistle. If I have to run to the 5-yard line, it's easier for me. But if I'm running and the coach blows the whistle and I got to do it, now you're going to see him running, boom, all of a sudden they'll do what I call an angle stop. We just come in, a rotational plant, okay? All right, so here's the group of girls again. Decelerate with a purpose. If you look at all of them, the middle one, well, she hasn't finished yet. She hasn't gotten all the way down yet. But if you look at the girl in the back, really dorsiflex well, and the lead girl, great knee position, great shoulder position, ready to re-accelerate to finish the drill. Okay, what's wrong with this? What would you correct on this athlete? When he's doing a lateral shuffle, he was doing that 5-5-5 shuffle drill. What would you correct? His upper body. But if you look at his angles, I haven't even tried this yet. I can't see. Well, if you look at this angle right here, I can't see that. If you look at that angle right there, that's a pretty good lower body angle. Everything looks good. So don't go over coaching and say, that's horrible, everything's bad. And this athlete, who actually was a hockey player, he was a pretty good hockey player, 5, 6 years ago in a high school in New York. He just made a mistake on that one drill, and I happened to catch him. He was really good on lateral movement. He just got lazy, something happened, and he just collapsed, and I happened to catch it on camera. So the only thing I would say to him is just get your upper body right. Correct that. And he normally does. But if you look at that, you don't have to correct everything. You just got to get his shoulders up because everything else was pretty good. Okay, here's a deceleration drill I like to use with my athletes, and I do it not, this is the basic one. And I'll talk about the other ones in a second here, but watch this. We're working on backside mechanics and being able to control your body coming down and wanting to flex. I got to be able to eccentrically be able to unload on this. Okay, so I'm taking that medicine ball and I'm acting like I'm going to slam it, but then I decelerate it. So if you add like a 30-pound medicine ball and you do that, that's very, very challenging. And you got to be careful because it can make you really, really sore initially. But start it with 2 legs, but then start to add 1 leg. So you can go 2 to 1 or 1 to 1 or 1 to the same one, like a hop, but then start to add laterals to it. So have them shuffle across, stop the ball. Now I'm fighting rotational and lateral frontal plane forces. Really, really good drill for loading the system and teaching athletes to stay strong in their core. Because when you say to an athlete, stay strong in your core, I don't know that they know what that means. Other than, flexing and doing something like that. I don't know if they know what that means, but this, they don't have to know because they're going to do it. The body's going to react. Okay, here's the other part. Here's the deceleration move when I'm working on the feet. Okay, so now I'm going to decelerate away. Watch the backside leg. Big angle. And that gets me to re-accelerate. I'm not just concerned about decelerating. If I can put my focus in re-accelerating, I'm going to have a much cleaner pattern. And there's some teaching that has to go on, obviously, but I want my hips back, shoulders over, good angle, dorsiflex, and pop that ball through. See my foot straight ahead on that plant, and then push. Okay? Okay, there's what I was talking about before, intensity or speed. A lot of times, when I used to first start coaching, I would just spend so much time on all the little details. Well, sometimes it didn't connect with the athlete. But if I said, go harder, just go fast. Stop fooling around, get to that corner and get back here as quick as you can. It did 2 things. It got the athlete moving faster. That afforded me to do a better job of coaching their real mistakes. Because when you go slow on an exercise or you're only using a rehearsed pattern, many times you don't get their full effort that you're going to get in game time. So you got to sometimes get them into that game intensity. Or another way to do it is have them race. Get two people going together. All right, so have a winner and a loser, so nobody wants to lose, so they'll compete. Okay. I'm going to go through this really quick. If there's questions on this, I'll slow down. There's a lot of great people out there that teach sprinting stuff. I've coached track for years, but I just wanted to mention this. Some of the mistakes that we see in sprinting is arm action. Okay, the other one is leg action. Seems simple, right? But we're missing the concepts. We have a notion that the arms are always at 90 degrees. Well, that's not true. The arms are at 90 degrees about at midway when my upper arm is vertical to the ground. Okay, but then when it comes back here, it opens a little bit, and then when it comes up here, it closes. All right, and I might. Yeah. So if you look at the third thing, arm swing, we get, those are similar. Some are not that much, some are more or less on our degrees with our arms. But we want to make sure we allow that. And it's just like in acceleration. When we accelerate, our arms open way up. They get way back. They're 120 degrees. They'll go way back, but why? Because this action allows this action, which allows that action of the other leg. So we got to let the arms do the work. I was talking earlier with a really, really good coach that's really good with multi-directional speed, and I was saying a cue that I like to use with my athletes is throw your hands, because it just makes sense to them. If I'm here and I go to accelerate and they throw their hands, it just gets a reaction out of them, a really good reaction. So that helps them. But if I say spin from their shoulder, they don't know what that means, They don't quite get that. When they get more advanced in athletics, they might understand that, but Okay, here's just a simple couple drills that I do to help my athletes understand posture. All I'm doing here is just simply working on getting tall and extending through the bottom foot, ankle, arm action back, and then we march it, lift. Here, this is what's different than acceleration. Sprinting is there is going to be an undulating look. If you watch a sprinter, they do go up and down because there's so much force application on that cycle. They're going to have air time. As we're acceleration, it's more, like I was saying earlier, it's horizontally tall. Okay, and then I would run them in place and then add other things to them. Okay, here's some drills for max velocity, A-skips. So we're working posture, technique. So if we want to be able to get max velocity and maintain form, one of the best tips I ever got in sprinting is run 95% effort when you want to run as fast as you can. Because if you run 100% effort, it becomes very tight and gritty. But if you float, great sprinters float. I was at a BYU, watched a track meet yesterday, and a couple good sprinters. Man, the guy that won was just so relaxed, cheeks flopping, just like we teach. Okay, high knees with focus on pushing into the track. Okay, it's it's up, and it's that force down into the track. Okay. What time do I have? Does anybody know? 5:45? Okay, so I still got a few more minutes. Good. I was asked just to mention large group training. I've done a lot of this. I've done teleseminars on it, and I've lectured on large group training. This right here is a really neat concept for all of you to try sometime. Everybody knows what the combines are, okay? I do this thing called the Pro-Style Combine Clinic, where this is what this is. This was in my facility in New York. I had about 75 athletes, and what I do is I bring the athletes in, and we teach them a whole system, but we test them on 6 tests. Okay, we do vertical, and we do 6 other tests, and a couple of them are my tests that I use, and we do the 20, and we do pro shuttle and 5-5-5 vertical, and we do a medicine ball throw, and then we do a read and react. So if you're my guy going, I got a cone there, or excuse me, a cone here, here, and you just go to the one I point to. You got to get back to the middle. I put a box in the middle, so you got to get your foot in the box, locate me because I'm pointing to the next one when you're running back. So we go through those 6 tests, but we start out, we teach the athletes a proper warm-up system they can use. And then we go through the test. And then after the test, then I teach. Then the clinic comes in. And I do all the skills and all the techniques and all the concepts they should have to have done better on that test. And to carry over into their particular sport. So it's a really neat concept, and I'm going to tell you, it draws kids in. So if you run college strength and conditioning camps, this is a neat concept. It works really well, and I've done them for YMCAs and for like volleyball clubs and AAU clubs, and it's pretty neat. But when we're talking about large group training, the most important thing, and you guys know this because that's what you do, especially if you work with football. I mean, you're just dealing with volume of athletes. You've got to plan ahead, and you've got to plan for the things that could go wrong because you've got to be ready to adjust quickly. Understand traffic flow. If I had this room right here, which would be awesome to train in because it's so big, but I had all of you, now I've got to say, okay, I've got a lot of people in here. I got tables. I've got to be able to get everybody through a really good workout and understand traffic flow. So if we're going down these aisles, how are we going to get back without hitting each other? So you got to plan for stuff like that. And when we do multi-directional speed, I spend a lot of time on 5 seconds and under because I'm after massive speed. I'm not after conditioning when I'm doing multi-directional speed. I want just raw power. Sometimes it's 3 seconds. Literally, if you get some of these top college players, and they'll run the basketball court and make a layup in just over 3 seconds. So you just to consider the time covered. So you've got to be really, really aware of what drills you're going to implement that the whole group can do, that you can get really good teaching done, but it doesn't have any downtime. Because if I do an exercise that, let's say it's going to take 30 to 45 seconds to do, and there's 8 to 10 people in each line, those last people in the line are sitting there for a long time before they actually get to participate. So that's not a very good use of time. So you've got to plan for everything. And I'm actually preaching to the choir. You guys, that's what you guys do, dealing with big groups. So Know what formations you want too. That's critical. If you put people in single line file, but it would have worked a lot better in a like just a mass group, like a spread out group, something like that. You got to know what you're going to do. Okay. When you plan a training session based on number of athletes, size of the facility, skills covered, periods, all that stuff, you want to make sure that you even include. I'll give you an example. And I was thinking of this earlier when I was going to do this. In one of the facilities, I had my whole surface was all the plyoaerobic flooring, the rubberized agility flooring. Well, what happened, it was a really hot, humid day in New York, and I had a lot of athletes, and they were sweating like crazy, and the floor got really, really slick. So I literally had to stop everything we were doing moving and make everything stationary. I had to switch really, really quick. Number one, for safety. Number two, because I couldn't teach. I'm trying to teach them to decelerate, but they kept falling. They kept slipping, and there was danger there. So I had to switch on the fly really, really fast. And that's where the safety comes in. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Please feel free to fire away. I'm going to be around. I have to leave early in the morning because I got to get back for a training session in Utah. But I'll be around today, the rest of the afternoon, and tonight. With hands? You mean with hands? Yeah, great question. The question was, do I teach touching lines with hands? So if you're doing a shuttle run, touching with your hands. I do not, unless there's a reason for it. And here's why. And it has nothing to do with slowing them down well, it does, but it has nothing to do with the mechanics of it. It's not what they normally do. So I try to be as real as possible. So if I'm doing a shuttle run, or I might put a cone, like a 9-inch cone, if I'm on proper angles, when I go to decelerate on a shuttle drill, I should be pretty low anyway. So when I come in, I should be down pretty low so I can touch. But here's what happens. If I come up and I touch the line, and I don't plant far enough, or at least on or possibly beyond the line, what happens to my posture? My center, where I should be, if I break myself down the middle, goes too much this way. My ratio of body is too far towards the direction I'm trying to get away from. I'm trying to go this way. So if I come up and I plant and I touch, I end up going like this. So now my reacceleration and all the technique and all I was just talking about just went out the window. So what I want to do, if I'm going to touch the line, I want to touch inside my feet. And it may say, well, yeah, but you're going further. Well, I don't care, because technically it's better. So when I come up, I might touch, this way. But if I come up and I touch here, that just killed my reacceleration mechanics. Does that make sense why? And that's the reason I do it. And I'll tell you another, when I was at Bollettieri's Tennis Academy back in '91 working with tennis players, there was a couple trainers that did a lot of the line drills and they touched a lot. We had a lot of athletes with sore backs because there's a tremendous amount of hard flexion down in poor posture. They weren't using their hips to get down. They were using their lumbar spine and getting down because they were told to hit the line. So it does. If it would help me, I would use it, but it doesn't help me, so I don't use it. To reaccelerate back the other way? Great question. And I get that question all the time, and I forgot to actually cover that, so I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you. Did everybody hear that question? I teach, and again, I don't necessarily teach it. It just happens. I endorse it, is what I should say, because it happens naturally. When he was talking about the shuffle, how I was saying the front foot turns out and we use the heel, but he's saying now that goes against everything I'm talking about when I want to plant and go back the other way. Well, here's what happens. In natural reaction, the foot will just instinctively turn and it'll plant. It's a protective thing. Anytime, watch, I'll shuffle. So if I'm shuffling and I want to stop, that foot just naturally turns back into the normal position. Okay? So it'll come right back. And this is what I ask you to do. Everything that I talked about that seems a little bit against what you've been taught, try it with your groups. Get your college athletes, get a group of them and just say, hey, look, we're going to warm up. I'm going to try a couple things with you and just watch them. Or the normal training that you do, Watch for these things because it'll be there. It'll exist in the normal movement patterns of athletes, especially if it's reactive. So what happens is that foot will just naturally turn on stopping. You don't have to coach that. The only thing you're going to have to coach, and it's not necessarily coaching, it's manually working with them, is to free up the ankle joint if they don't have that ability to get there. Some people, their feet are just out. It's really hard for them. That mortise is gunked up there, and they don't have that ability to get here. So that's when they're going to need some manual therapy with someone. Okay? Does that get that?
Do you teach outside foot higher when changing direction? Say you're running this way and you want to change directions. So I'm running here. We teach the outside foot higher so that we're able to take that next foot and plant this way. How do you can you talk about that a little bit when you're running this way and you want to change directions, outside foot higher? We teach that.
If I'm coming straight ahead and I want to go that way, okay, I want to plant. Everything that we try to teach in re-accelerating, because that's basically what it is, it's getting into a deceleration and changing direction, or that would be what I would call a sharp cut. I didn't go through cutting. I have a whole progression of cutting that I go through. That would be a sharp cut. When I'm going to do a sharp cut, so if you can see me, when I'm coming at you and I want to go this way, if this line right here, I have to get in front of that line on an angle, dorsiflex foot position to plant and go this way. If I'm here and I'm trying to plant and go this way, I am not in a good multi-purpose cut position. And what that means is I might be able to decelerate a little bit going this way, but I can't re-accelerate this way. But if I turn here, that locks my joint and it allows me to push off. So I would be coming in, and that would be my push off. So my foot will be in front. It's like a high jumper. Okay, I got to stop horizontal movement to get vertical. Well, here I'm going horizontal to lateral horizontal, so I got to plant here and then push off. But it comes with the hip movement. So as I go to make my plant, the hips start to turn and open, so now I'm going to do that directional step and go in the new direction. So that's a whole cutting sequence we'll teach. So what I'll do often is I'll take cones and set them up in like a continuous box. You know what I mean? So you just have it like all those 45 or 90 degree angles, and we'll just have the athletes jog through it and just work. Plant, we'll go here, and we just keep getting repetition with it. Then we make it live. Now they do it on my whistle. Maybe 50% effort. Then we go fast, and then we get intense. So great question. That's good. Hopefully that helped.
Okay, we'll do one more question.
Okay.
Hey, Lee, excellent job. I knew you'd do that, and I appreciate you coming out. My question is more from the static start.
Yep.
When you said with the plyo step, I get that. What have you seen when you stagger that start? If, like, say I'm right dominant.
Yep.
And you get me in a left leg stagger, am I still gonna? How has the body reacted, and what have you seen?
The question on that is so if I'm staggered in either position like this, and then I go to react and take off, and here's my answer every time on that, Joe. If the athlete intuitively feels they are not in a great position to push off, or like they don't know where they're going to go. If I knew I'm coming at you, I knew my responsibility, bar none, was right there. I'm pretty good. I could probably lean and pressure my body to be able to just power step and go. But if I didn't know, even if I'm staggered, because have you ever seen wide receivers who are staggered a little bit, and they still do it? But some of the wide receivers get way out. They don't need it. So it's all if the body feels like, I don't know, if I react, I don't have enough angle to push off quick enough, it'll probably happen. That's why I don't get on my athletes if they do it. If they're in a staggered stance, and I put them in a staggered stance to eliminate, well, not actually eliminate that step, because I don't mind that step, but to improve their chances of accelerating faster, and they still do it, then something was wrong with the setup. So if they're in this stance and they're vertical, I guarantee you I'm going to do it right now. But if I'm like this and I'm down here, now I've got a lot over this front foot. Now there's probably no chance that I'll do it. I'll be able to just decelerate and take off. So anytime you see it, why did they do it? Must be their shoulders were back. Okay, it must be too much was behind that foot. They couldn't do it. But if you get them here like this, shoulders out in front, now I should be able to take off and go. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And speaking of that, with the corners in football, corners a lot of times are taught, here, and they're taught to kind of pivot out or to step out of it, but that's not what happens. When a receiver comes at and reacts and swims, it's repositioning the feet. So whether they have to go this way to jam or they're in soft press and they're just coming and getting out of it, it's going to be a reposition step. You watch. It's got to be there. Because if not, first of all, do you want your football player with cleats into the turf, trying to pivot on that? It's like soccer or lacrosse into the turf. You don't want that. So it's reposition, apply force, get a great angle, and get off. But always keep the shoulders in front. Even when you open and you turn, shoulders are always in front. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you, guys. I hope I helped.